Hey, so I wanted to talk about this fake news thing one more time. This is going to be a part two because I kind of want to nail down the severity of what they're doing and how dangerous it is. Um, this is literally how democracies fall into totalitarianism. And I'm not being hyperbolic. This isn't me blowing this out of proportion or anything like that. Um, they are literally trying to discern what's real and what's not. And that is an outright attack on the First Amendment. So I agree with people when they say, well, two things. And in some sense, this puts me in the mind of Republicans when they're doing the whole voter fraud thing. Oh, there's voter fraud, there's voter fraud, there's voter fraud. There's no voter fraud. And yet they would use that as a premise to pass voter ID laws that adversely affects hundreds of thousands of people across the United States. I think it's an astonishing number of people that don't have those IDs. Or they would use, gun licenses that right-wingers are more likely to have than student license, which Democrats are likely to have. So this is a standard political trick. And what I mean is, you come up with an excuse, and then based on that excuse, you come up with an excuse, and then based on that excuse, you find a solution that has nothing to do with what you're dealing with. Like, so for instance, what they want to do, the voter ID doesn't touch the voter fraud they're talking about at all. Doesn't touch it. And so the law had nothing to do with what they were saying it did. In a sense, the whole fake news thing, look, on some degree, the media establishment of mainstream media and politics work hand in hand. And I say that to say, in the Podesta emails, there were cases where quote-unquote journalists would send their stories for review to the Hillary camp. You're fucking journalists, man. Why are you... You need to regard the political establishment as the enemy if you're going to keep them honest. And I don't mean just make shit up. I mean keeping them honest. I mean investigative journalism, going after those guys. They're not your friends. Your job is not to be their friends. Your job is to keep them honest. And you've massively failed in that job. Whether it's New York Times cheerleading the war in Iraq, whether it's the Washington Post attacking Bernie Sanders day after day after day, just making shit up after him. Whether it's the Daily Beast making shit up about Bernie Sanders. Whether it's the Washington Post coming out with a story talking about fake news and it being caught lying in that story. Oh, okay. They weren't lying in as much as they were just wrong. You make a distinction between those. My point is, there is fake news out there. But did fake news cause Hillary Clinton the election? And look, the mainstream media, for the most part, unanimously wanted Hillary in office. Unanimously. I mean, all of those journalists bow their heads. They just bow their heads. Queen Hillary Clinton. And they were wrong. Huffington Post had some dumbass thing telling me she had a 98% chance of winning. I guess my point is, they're having a hissy fit because she lost. And so they're toting this line of fake news, as if fake news had anything to do with her losing. There might have been a certain percentage of people that said, they saw some news story that they didn't particularly like that was unfavorable to Clinton. But Trump was getting that too. I mean, the thing is, the people who were swayed with a lot of that stuff were already going to vote for Trump. I mean, those people they were baked into the cake. You can look at the after effects of the voting. Hillary lost because she didn't hit on an economic message. She didn't lose because of that. When they asked people in the exit polls would they have voted for Bernie Sanders, those people said yes, they would have preferred Bernie Sanders. So this fake news thing is red herring, man. They're still in denial, the second stage of grief. And they need to get to acceptance, Accept that she was just a horrible fucking candidate. And she was so tone deaf to what the country was looking for at the time. It had nothing to do with fake news. So I wanted to hit that first to show that, A, Their crying about fake news had nothing to do with her loss. It just didn't. They're looking for excuses. They're looking for anything to blame. Oh, it's Russia. Oh, it's Colombian. Oh, it's fake news. Oh, it's racist. Everybody in the country is racist. They may be racially insensitive, but they're not racist outright. I mean, at least not, the half of the people that voted for Trump. No. I mean, not all of them. I mean, you might have a good 20%. And look, I'm pulling this number out of my ass. And you might say, I'm biased, or I'm not biased. You might say that I don't want to believe that most of the country is racist. And that's true. I don't. And does that affect my saying that not all of them were racist? It does. But I just don't believe it. I mean, I've seen people who voted for Trump. I've interacted with people who voted for Trump. I mean, they may harbor certain sentiments that I don't like. But can I say they're outright racist? Can I say they would do stuff purely for the sake of race? No. I mean, is it one of those things where I think that the racist voter was going to vote Republican anyway because the racist voter has always, at least for the past 50 years, has voted Republican. That's what it goes down to, man. So, no. So, no. It's not fake news. She was a horrible candidate. Own it. Accept it. Accept it. Second part. This is a really dangerous precedent. Like, they're literally trying to cripple the First Amendment. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It literally, the framers was like, yeah, we need to put some in there for this, and this is important. It is so important. We're putting freedom of speech as the first item in that list. These guys, with their panties in a bunch because they lost the election, are saying, yeah, we need to do something about that First Amendment. It's saying stuff that we don't like, and we need to do something about it. That's dangerous. I mean, I can't get across how dangerous that is. So let's say during 9/11, or during the Iraq War, somebody comes out and says, oh, not even Iraq War, let's say under Obama. Obama has been using the Espionage Act to lock up whistleblowers. They tortured Bradley Manning. He's in prison right now, or she's in prison right now, however you want to call it. Either way, I don't care if it's a he, she. What I care about is what the government is doing in this regard. And they got that man in prison for exposing something that was true. The United States was killing civilians. Snowden is in a foreign country because his own government is trying to lock him up for exposing illegal behavior. I mean, this is not hyperbole. This is reality. I mean, the Obama administration put out a thing, NDAA, that allowed him to lock up American citizens indefinitely. Indefinite detention of American citizens. Habeas corpus? Fuck needs habeas corpus. We don't need that. That's a problem. That's in our way. Nobody bitched. Nobody said anything about it then. I mean, look, this is my point. If you're leaving it up to government who lies through their teeth, who has not a honest bone in their body, to make a determination of what's true, then you're fucked. We're all fucked. I mean, so an investigative journalist piece comes out and says Obama has killed thousands of people in like 7 illegal wars where he's just bombing people, but he's not calling it a war. He's calling it something else so he can give himself the extra constitutional ability to do it. And he's killing civilians. Many of the people he's killing, he doesn't even know who he's dropping bombs on. That's not hyperbole. That's literally. But maybe the Obama administration comes out and says, hey, that's fake news. We don't want you reporting that. You're on that fake news list. And if you report that again, there's going to be consequences. Well, that news is true. What Obama's saying is a lie. Let's go to the other thing, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Trans-Pacific Partnership literally allows multinational corporations to sue the United States government if we pass a law that adversely affects their profits. That's under Obama. It's literally creating a third-party agency outside of the United States, a foreign international tribunal. And it's giving that tribunal of corporate lawyers the ability to determine, to some degree, U.S. law. Again, that's not hyperbole. I mean, this stuff sounds so dystopian, but it's not hyperbole. I mean, people are watching football while their rights are being just ripped up And they're going to look up one day like, well, how the fuck did this happen? It happened because you weren't paying the goddamn attention. I mean, let's go to the other thing. World Trade Organization. So Mexico filed a lawsuit against the United States saying that our fishing nets, we have dolphin safe tuna where we have it on the package. And they essentially made the argument, look, we can't afford those fishing nets. And because we can't afford those fishing nets, that is an unfair advantage that the United States fishermen have in order to sell their product. The United States lost that case. And the United States repealed the law that repealed that law for the dolphin safe tuna because of the World Trade Organization. They would have had to pay heavy fines or something. All I'm saying is, if you're going to allow a foreign body to determine what's true, we are in a bad, bad place. When you're outlawing dissenting opinion, because that's dissenting opinion is against your interests, that's a problem. That's a big problem. You need dissenting opinion, even if some of the dissenting opinion is going to be bullshit. And it is. So here's another example. So sites like Truthdig, sites like The Intercept, those guys are investigative journalists. And those guys are going to put up stories that the government hates. They're going to absolutely hate because it gets into governmental corruption and the things that government is doing wrong. So is there going to be a situation that the government says that's untruth? Like that site is now giving media that's doesn't meet our smell test? I mean, after all, they put Truthdig already. Truthdig has Robert Scheer. Robert Scheer has been a journalist for 40 years. He's interviewed every president. And now that guy is somehow fake news? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. That's insane. That is insane. It's not fake news because you don't like it. You didn't lose the election because of fake news. You lost the election because you were a horrible fucking candidate and you did not have an economic message at all. And you thought because you had a vagina, that having a vagina somehow forced people to vote for you. And then you categorize them as misogynists when they didn't want to vote for you. They just didn't like you, man. I mean, come on. It's not fake news. All news is... Look, Alex Jones, Fox News, The Drudge Report. Yeah, that shit is fake news. But that is not the same as something like Truthdig or The Intercept. They're just not. And if you're going to have Google or Facebook trying to scrub that, trying to be the thing that says make the determination on what's true, then you're going to have problems. Like if you're going to say, yeah, Google, there's certain sites that we don't want you to show. That's a problem. Your task is to show people how to think critically and how to make determinations on what's real and what's fake, not to destroy the First Amendment and not to create some dumbass law that tries to say what's real and what's not. People can make determination on what's real and what's not on their own if you give them what they need to. The problem is that mainstream media has gotten so ridiculous and so run down that you're just not trusted. Nobody believes you. And because they don't believe you, they look to other sources. And some of those sources just so happen to be full of shit. The problem is not them. The problem is you. Your lead up to the war in Iraq was atrocious. Mainstream media fell in line and essentially held the war flag. $6.6 trillion. 1 million people dead. That's real. Those are real lives. Mothers, sisters, sons and daughters, teachers. Those are real people. Iraq had a vibrant infrastructure. Now that guy was a dictator, but do you think that bombing the shit out of him and killing all those people was somehow a better option than a dictator? Do you really believe that incineration by a bomb is somehow better than somebody chopping somebody else's head off? It's not. Just in case you wanted to know, it's not. Murder is murder. Whether we do it, whether it's state sanctioned, whether a strong man somewhere else does it. And the newspaper is just kind of cheerleading that. It's far more disastrous and far more ghastly than Alex Jones talking about lizard people or talking about aliens running the U.S. government. Look, man, there is a difference between fake news and real news. And the last thing you want to do is create a situation or a slippery slope but the government can attack news organizations that it does not like. The government and news organizations has always had a tenuous relationship. It's always been stressful. Their job is to check power. So power generally dislikes real journalists. So the last thing you want to do is give government a tool where they can actually attack real journalists legally through legislation. And we are talking about putting people in prison for asserting their First Amendment rights. Let alone, how is this going to be used for protesters? What would have just been done for Standing Rock? When people are posting stories about Standing Rock and the government in power doesn't particularly like the stories that are being posted, even though they're true. And they decide to lock journalists up to shut them up about something that they don't particularly like. Obama might not do it, but with Trump, you don't give people that power, even if you trust them, because at some point there are going to be people who don't trust using it. And you should be extraordinarily skeptical of government and governmental power and governmental overreach, particularly when it's affecting you and your right to know. Not just a right to know, your need to know. You can't make decisions if you don't know. So, fake news, I don't like it, but this is bullshit. And this is not the conversation we need to have. Let's have a conversation about income inequality. Let's have a conversation about how to get people fair wages and how to get rid of poverty and how to make sure they can go to school without crushing debt and make sure they get health care when they need it. Let's have that conversation. I don't want fake news shit, man. Fuck off. Fuck off. Hillary Clinton. I've said it before. Go the fuck home. You've enriched yourself on the government tip. God bless. Go home. Go home. You've given us to a madman. This is your legacy. Whatever he does, whatever crimes he commit, it is on you. And it's on those mainstream media organizations that peddle those bullshit, ridiculous stories that they were peddling at the time when Donald Trump was running. So I'm greatly annoyed at the fake news thing, because I think it takes us down a really dark, dark path, and it's a path that we don't want to go. And at some point, our kids, even us, we're going to look up and be like, wait, how the fuck did we get here? You're watching football, man. You're watching wrestling. You're watching the Kardashians. You're watching ridiculous shit that had nothing to do with anything. And at the same time, while they were giving you circus and wine, they were out there doing shit that undermined your rights and undermine your ability to have a decent life. All right, I'm into here. I kind of want to rant, but I don't want to keep going with it. So, all right, guys, have a good one.